My name's Deena. Nice to meet you all. I'm here with IDEO, and I have had the extreme pleasure to work with these amazing two ladies for the last 2 years. So this is Corrie Conrad, all the way over here.
Hello.
Corrie is Vice President of Everything Wonderful at Sephora. So we were trying to figure out what's in this job title. I think it's social impact, sustainability, and diversity and inclusion.
Yep.
Amazing.
Well
and
done.
Deena Shakir, who is a partner at the venture capital firm formerly known as Google Ventures, currently known as GV. And I have been working with you guys for, I guess, the better past of a year and a half now. Yeah. And we have been working on this book project, which was, the ambition of it was to bring together a lot of different people from across the social impact space and this purpose-led business space to think about how we can meaningfully move this conversation forward.
And I have to interrupt here just for a second because Deena deserves some praise for this. She reached out to dozens of us and cold emailed some of us and had a tremendous response. And so your hustle, your grit, your grind, as Mark said earlier, just really shone through. And the fact that we're sitting here today is thanks to you. So thank you, Deena.
I appreciate that, but I was really in this project just a curator of over 40 wonderful leading voices in business who each wrote 5,000 words or a 20-page paper for those of us still in school on the amazing work that they're doing. It ended in 2 books, one called Perspectives on Impact, which is focusing really on the cross-sectoral collaboration and thinking about how we can make systemic change at scale and speed. And the second book, which is really the focus of what we're going to talk about today, is looking at purpose in particular, which is basically what's the role of business in all of this? If we know that change happens in the systemic way with a lot of different people coming together to make change, what is the role of business in society? Can business make impact? Can they go beyond this idea of self-interest? And I think that's a great place to start because both of you have had these very storied careers in various parts of the impact world. Deena, you've been in government and nonprofit. Corrie, you were also in nonprofit and then even in engineering. Both worked together actually at google.org back in the day.
Very briefly, we did.
Yeah, we did.
Yep. So I'm curious, why did you take yourselves out of those impact-minded worlds and into the corporate world, which is typically thought of as a self-interested one and one where impact may or may not play a role?
Absolutely.
Sure. You want me to go first?
Yeah, kick it off.
All right. Let's see. So why corporate social impact, right? I think, like many of us here, I have always been very mission-driven. And so impact, yes. I remember when I was an international studies and French major in college, I would be misinterpreted. Oh, international studies, is that international business? And I was offended at that. No, I want to help people. It's not about making money. I cringe a little bit now to share that with you. I think the last 13 years of my career have been squarely in the corporate world, and very much with the vision of using the strength of business for greater good. With this thesis that kind of I start from a place of doing good is the right thing to do, and it turns out that it's really good for business too. And so this idea that doing good is good for business, we shouldn't be afraid of that. That is I think we should embrace that, and that we can truly change the world together through our businesses when we think about the unique strengths our business brings to the needs in our communities and the needs in our world, and we see where those overlap, and that's where you should operate. That's where you should do your thing. And so I think the scale, why corporate impact for me has been very much around the scale and the reach of the resources available there. And then the unique opportunity to use strengths for greater good, to help the business do well, to do more good, to help the business do well, to do more good. So.
That's great. And Deena, for you, what brought you from this government nonprofit background into a venture capital firm?
Yeah, it's a great question. Definitely a non-traditional path for somebody in venture capital. And I loved the focus that we just heard around the identity of an immigrant, because that's really where it all started with me. My parents fled Iraq in the 70s and 80s, and sort of growing up Iraqi-American and Muslim-American, coming of age during 9/11, that was very, very transformative for me as, in elementary school and high school. school and when I went to college, it really helped shape my ambitions around impact and building bridges and partnerships. It was part of who I was. And so I graduated college thinking that I was going to be a journalist, that I would use storytelling as a way to change the narrative, and that would be my mechanism for impact. And I did so very briefly. Don't try to find it online. There may be an episode where I was on air doing a bilingual Arabic-English news show very briefly, but I was actually helping cover President Obama's speech in 2009, which some of you may remember. It's where he talked about new beginnings with the Muslim world and proposed this notion of entrepreneurship as a way of building bridges and creating livelihoods and opportunities for dignity. So I abandoned my fledgling career in journalism to actually join the Obama administration, and I did that for a few years and helped build out this program on entrepreneurship. And in doing so, I got to know a lot of the tech firms and the startups. I met Corrie during that time, and I became really just excited by the notion of technology and products as a mechanism for real sustainable change. The Arab Spring happened during that time, and I sort of saw before my eyes real revolutions that were happening, and I don't think it's as simple as a tech revolution. I think that was part of it. There was much more to it, and it took a different path than many of us thought. But at the end of the day, I was amazed by the fourth industrial revolution, as it's now come to be called, and the way that businesses were changing lives. So moved into tech. We worked together very briefly on a team that was building product for social impact at Google. And then I sort of followed the product, spent many years working on early stage product across Google in a number of impactful areas, including healthcare, and then ultimately joined Google Ventures to help build businesses and grow businesses across many sectors, many of whom I think are going to be changing the world in a truly impactful way.
That's great. So Corrie, I'd love to start with you. In the book, you talk about this incredible journey that you went on coming to Sephora, and you're basically given a blank slate to build a social impact platform. And I'm curious if you could just narrate that story for us, or at least the spark notes of it.
Yeah, the cliff notes.
What
Sure.
some of the biggest challenges were along the way.
Definitely. So it was a little bit perhaps of a crazy idea to kind of a cliff jump, if you will, to leave one sector to a new sector where I had no background in retail and no background in beauty. But I love to learn. And so kind of learn and do is a motto for me. And when I started, the journey really began at Sephora with getting to play anthropologist consultant, right? Like, who are we? What are we good at? And I had interviews with over 100 of our employees that first month from our stores and our headquarters and our distribution centers even, of like, in one word, what is Sephora to you? And I asked that question, among others, to everybody, collected those data points, and themes emerged. And these themes really resonated as strengths. And so the first part of this journey was identifying what are our strengths. The next part was looking at the needs. So where in our communities, we have a fleet of stores across the country. We're in Canada, Mexico, and Brazil as well, from our Americas headquarters in San Francisco. And where those strengths met needs, we saw opportunity. And so one of the strengths, I'll give a couple of quick examples, is on teaching. One of the core brand behaviors for Sephora is to teach. We have free classes in our stores. How might we use those classes for greater good in our communities? And there were several ideas that came up. An initial one was around workforce reentry. A natural professional makeup look can help with a job interview. And so we partnered with over 100 different nonprofits across the United States and launched a special class for workforce reentry. Veterans organizations, Dress for Success, a bunch of others within that space. We then launched Brave Beauty for those on a cancer journey, again, where what Sephora is uniquely positioned to do can make a positive difference. Last year, we launched Bold Beauty for the transgender and gender nonconforming communities. And I love to tell the story of how we came up with curriculum for Bold Beauty and Brave Beauty, because it really began with our employees. Our people, I do that, sorry. Our people who had been on these journeys themselves could draw from their own experience and share from what they had wished they had received that didn't exist, but now could draw and create and give that to others. And so it's been a really neat way to not only serve through our nonprofit partners across the country, but also engage our people and getting to be a part of it. So teach was one piece. Entrepreneurship was another. When Sephora got its start in the late 90s in the United States, we're a French-owned company. LVMH is our parent company. And many of the existing beauty brands couldn't be sold in Sephora because they had pre-existing contracts, or they didn't want to take a risk on an upstart retail model. And so we found new brands that no one had heard of, and we worked with their founders to build their businesses. And when I looked at the data when I started in 2015, of our top selling brands, the majority were still led or founded by men. So there was an opportunity for us to lean into this strength of supporting and working with entrepreneurs, and do that for even greater good by equipping and empowering women entrepreneurs who happen to be women. And so Accelerate is the program we did for that. So those are kind of two quick examples of the journey. A final piece I'll just share is that our most recent step, and I think of the brand evolution for Sephora, is sharing publicly a lot of the good that has been done. So those programs were public facing, but we hadn't taken kind of a public marketing stance on this until just a few weeks ago, when Sephora launched our manifesto. So saying, this is what we believe in, really a commitment to inclusion, and recognition that we humbly step forward, right? Like, we're not gonna get it right all the time, and yet we're committed to doing better. We don't just wanna do better, we're making a public commitment to do better, and I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, I love this Sephora example. I think it's such an interesting one for so many of the big multinationals in the world, hoping and bringing truly purpose and impact out into the world. But that's for a big company. Deena, your world is a very different one, with a lot of startups at various stages. And impact, of course, is a big part of so much of the startup rhetoric, especially out in Silicon Valley. Saving the world is kind of like the meme of the day. I'm curious for you, what are startups able to save the world in a different kind of way? Are there people out there that are doing stuff meaningfully that you would point to as a productive form of business built with impact in mind?
Yeah, it's a great question. How many of you watch Silicon Valley? For show of hands. Great. So I'm sure you've all seen the sort of caricatures of the Silicon Valley startup who really believes that their messaging app or their caffeine gum or whatever it is saving the world. And it's great to have that passion and conviction. I don't think that there's one way that a company can save the world. There are many different examples, and I'm proud of those in our portfolio that are making an impact in their various different capacities, and I can share a few examples of that. There's a company called Blavity, which is based here in LA, which is very much a revenue-generating company, but it's a company that has provided a community and a space for African American professionals to publish things and get information online. To me, that's impact. It's also a wonderful business, and a business that we stand behind as investors. For reference, GV has been around about 10 years. We're the official venture capital arm of Alphabet, which is the parent company of Google. But we invest financially. We're not impact investors by definition. Although we, like our parent company, Alphabet, have values and ethics sort of built into how we make investments. And so we do have companies that are doing things that are more squarely for profit. They're all for-profit entities. But even those companies, there are things that many of them are doing with regards to diversity and inclusion, with regard to ethics and AI, which I think will have profound impact. One of my favorite examples in our portfolio is a company called Zipline. Has anybody heard of it? Show of hands. If you were here last year, you may have seen a brief video that I showed on stage at the Social Innovation Summit in 2018. Zipline is a company based in Half Moon Bay, California, but whose real operation and impact to date has been in Rwanda and most recently Ghana. They have built the largest commercial scale drone delivery system in the world, and the fastest. In Rwanda, anywhere in the country, you can have life-saving blood and medical supplies delivered within 15 minutes. It's absolutely unreal. The company, again, was started in Silicon Valley, but it is very much rooted in impact globally. And as you can imagine, there's tremendous opportunity on the commercial side for folks who are more interested in getting a burrito delivered in 15 minutes than life-saving blood. But it has saved thousands of lives. And also employed hundreds of people locally in these communities. And despite being founded by a Caucasian male based in Silicon Valley, there's a humility built into it, which I find incredibly inspiring, and not to mention the fact that they are literally delivering life-saving packages within 15 minutes. And so that's a company that, they're tremendous. Keep an eye on them. Their founder is amazing, but it's a company that is also going to be very, very profitable. And to me, that's sort of the best kind of business. Both parts, not just the profit.
That's great. And this whole purpose-led business topic and theme can be sliced and diced in so many ways, and there's so many things that we could go into if we had more time. But given that we're in the communities track, I wanted to talk to you both about how you see the various kinds of communities that businesses are thinking about, and the way that they might support those various communities in different ways.
Sure. Yeah, I think thinking about the different levels of community can be a helpful framing. With the umbrella for the work that I lead, it's Sephora Stands, is kind of the moniker for it. And we stand with our people, our planet, and our communities. I think one way we look at community is very kind of external, the nonprofit partners that we've worked with, and the kind of key connections there. There are hundreds of them now through our Classes for Confidence program and our giving programs. Another way is within. It's our people and the community that we're building there. And one of the things we've done around charitable giving directly in support of our people is an emergency hardship fund. It's called the Together Fund. And it also emerged out of that initial listening exercise, where one of the things that came up as a strength for us, particularly in our stores, was this notion of family. And so we can stand together as family at Sephora by supporting each other in times of natural disaster, crisis, or need. And so community very much at that people level, at our external community level, thinking around our planet as well, the community we all share. And then also our business partners. We're a part of an LVMH group, and so there are other businesses in that. We're a retailer, so there are hundreds of brands that we carry. These all are a part of how we think about community and how we then aim to set outcomes and impact metrics that we can achieve by working together towards a common goal.
Yeah, so as someone who's spent years in government and nonprofit and tech and now in venture, I've sort of been a part of a number of different communities, and I think one of the challenges with regard to impact specifically is that these communities can be siloed, and you can often be talking to the same group of people for many, many years. And I think one of the things actually that's really great about this conference is how it's brought together folks from retail, from tech, from startups, from nonprofit, from multilaterals together to really think about how we can have impact at scale. And I think there needs to be a lot more of that. As an intersectional person myself, and certainly as somebody who's worked across different sectors, that's been a source of frustration for me. So I think bringing the communities together is super important. And the other thing I'll say with regard to my day job at GV is those of us that do have the privilege of working at these large brands that resonate with folks can use that platform for the folks in our community. So we have 300 plus companies in our portfolio. Some of them are bigger known brands like Uber and Slack, and others aren't. And so part of my job is actually to bring together those folks and help to facilitate connections with large companies, with multinationals, in a way that simply is not possible for some of these smaller startups.
They aren't yet.
Not yet, they will be, yes.
That's great, and this facilitation of the meeting of the minds of these people from very different kinds of disciplines coming together to share practices and move conversation forward is ultimately the ambition of a conference like this and of the books that we worked on for so long. And I'm curious from both of you, what are some of those forward movements? So we've done so long coming together, thinking about all the different practices that people are taking in this space, and where do you see the room to grow?
I think quickly, top of mind often is charitable giving for companies, and I think it's really important. I've managed a lot of charitable giving in the past, and we have wonderful partners here that we've worked with on charitable giving. I think the challenge perhaps is to think and beyond that, and so that's where I think really looking at the strengths of a company and what you're uniquely positioned to do with your company and how you can do that, exactly that, for greater good. Is fundamental, and then again, to just approach it with humility. You're not going to get it perfect or right straight away, but you're going to learn, and you're going to do, and you're going to learn, and you're going to do better. So that's important.
Great. And Deena, we've got just a few seconds left, so a closing soundbite from you.
Yeah, I think one of the things we chatted about was this sort of notion of, on the nonprofit side, this sort of skepticism or incredulity around for-profit, that it's somehow dilutes your impact. And then similarly on the for-profit or investing side, I've witnessed the same thing on the other side of things, where companies that are focused on impact need to actually over-optimize on or overemphasize their ability to make money. And I think that the more we can bring those worlds together and really prove that there is something, beneficial with doing good and doing well, and really move beyond the buzz, because we've all been hearing the buzz for the last decade or so, ever since the term kind of impact investing was first coined. I think that there's real promise and potential, and we're seeing a lot of that with our companies.
That's wonderful. Thank you both for your time and for writing for these books and really putting into practice so much of what we preach around purpose and impact, and really pushing this stuff forward.
Thank you for bringing us together.